And as if she didn't already have enough on her plate, Rev and Tax Director Dafne Shimizu with another task. Um, I just want, Daphne, I just wish in the governor's Facebook Live yesterday, I wish she would have been like, no, Daphne, go ahead, finish the stimulus first, because I know you're doing the stimulus and the refund and then do the all rise. So, Rev and Tax, guys, is going to be responsible for paying out the not just the rise, but the all rise.
All rise.
Right. And you know what? Thank you, Chris and Sabrina, for getting me on this morning. And you're right. Yesterday, Governor did sign the executive order regarding the All Rise Act, which is basically an expansion of the Rise Act, which was enacted by the 35th Guam Legislature back in December. To go back to it, yes, on EIP3, can I just give an update really quickly?
Yes.
As if I want to go ahead and give that because you know what? We're excited that we already have almost $206 million that have been processed in payments for EIP3. And, we do have until December 31, 2021 to make those payments. Last week, on May 21, we did process another $1.4 million, but we're up to $205.8 million as of last week. Our team has been working to process EIP3 payments weekly. And so, we are trying to make sure that as people become newly eligible, meaning that maybe they had just filed a return for the first time for 2019 or 2020 and didn't have it in the system and we're now getting to it, or they had an issue with a return, meaning that required them to bring in some documents to us. We want to make sure that they have the opportunity to get paid as quickly as possible. So we've been making payments on a weekly basis. And again, we're just excited that, for those over 78,000 payments that we processed out as of last week, $206 million or $205.8 million, of course, has gone out to the community. And we're continuing to get those payments out, and we're going to try to get those payments out quickly. On the issue of the All Rise Act, which is, of course, was an expansion of the Rise Act and was signed by Governor yesterday in her executive order, there are questions about what's going to be involved. Am I eligible? When is it going to happen? Now, if you look at the Rise Act, which was enacted in 2020 in December, it does state that Rev and Tax has 30 working days from the identification of the source of funds to implement. And of course, that was also, I think, further reiterated in the All Rise Act EO yesterday. And what we're doing now, though, and Bree and Chris, we've always just done our best to try to get payments out as quickly as we can. Our team has already this past week begun meeting to determine, of course, how we're going to get the application form up and what's going to be involved. Make sure that we're communicating with our IT programmers on this, because again, this is going to be something that we're going to have to be able to have our system process. Something that we've, of course, been advocating, not just for this program, but for other things, is to utilize technology. So we're working on an online form, and that's something that we're hoping to be able to release soon. I mean, we do have, again, 30 working days from identification of funds, but we're trying to get it out as quickly as we can, and we'll have more information for everybody, again, as we move through the process of this. Again, it was just announced just this yesterday that the All Rise Act would be, again, implemented. And what's involved with All Rise, if you recall, the Rise Act did exclude government employees, whether it was federal or local government employees. All Rise now just expands the Rise Act so that way government employees, and this could be, for example, a private sector employee who may have been activated because of the public health emergency, perhaps in their capacity as a guard member or as a reservist, right, in this past year. So it could be somebody who may have worked in the government for one day or a couple of weeks within the year, but ended up, working in the private sector otherwise. So, there is now an expansion of the Rise to include all employees or anybody who falls below the $40,000 income threshold for single filers, or the $80,000 threshold in AGI for joint filers. So, again, those individuals, as long as you were a resident in Guam during the 2020 tax year, I believe, then you will be able to be eligible, but you must file an application form. And we are getting questions, Bree and Chris, about, well, why do I have to file an application form, right? For EIP3, for EIP2, or EIP1, there was no application form that was required. So why is it that, Rev and Tax is requiring this? And this is similar, of course, I think most similar in terms of programs, it's probably most similar to Azuri Imengafa, if you recall, which was another locally authorized program that, that required the use of tax return information. Now, we are what's called a mirror code territory here in Guam. And because we're a mirror code territory, meaning that we mirror the Internal Revenue Code, we follow the Internal Revenue Code. And that is actually in our Organic Act, right? That we utilize the Internal Revenue Code as the basis for our income tax administration. And the income tax code is, of course, mandated or even adjusted. If there are additional mandates to adjust the code, those are federally authorized from Congress and the President of the United States. And EIP is, of course, authorized by the federal government. The EIP program itself is actually going to be included in the Internal Revenue Code. And that's unlike any local mandates, which, of course, cannot be included in the Internal Revenue Code. Again, just by the nature of it, because it's a local mandate, it's not able to be included in the Internal Revenue Code. And the code itself specifies the reasons that we are authorized to access a tax return. Right. Yeah. So again, because the Internal Revenue Code includes EIP, which authorizes the use of tax return data, we were able to use your tax return data to determine eligibility and make payments. But a local program or local authorization, locally mandated programs, of course, do not get included in the authorized reasons for us to access your tax return data. So what's going to be part of the application process, which is just similar as well to what we did with the Tsuri Mengafa, is going to be explicit authorization by the taxpayer to utilize their tax return data for the administering of this program.
Daph, do you have any? Just going back to the stimmys, that's going by date of file, right? So did you say what date we're up to for processing?
In terms of the economic impact payment programs, and just to share, I know, how, if you recall, Chris, EIP is based on a validly filed and processed return. Yeah. We're still working to process returns. I think last week we had released refunds through Feb 26 or around that period. This week, again, we'll have a release this morning, likely on our the refunds that we have processed, but I believe we're already processing in early March. Now, the way that we process refunds is different from the way that we process and pay EIP. For refunds, we go by a file date, right? Which means that, every single, we do not, like, for example, if Bree files on, I guess, March 31 and you file on Feb 12, right? We will not pay Bree until we get to the March 31 date. We kind of keep going forward and paying out refunds for the entire class of people or all of filers for those particular days, right? Now, EIP, again, goes by a validly filed and processed return. And it is actually possible for somebody to file a return online and for somebody to file a return, a manual return. So say you file a return online and Bree files a manually filed return. Again, there is time that's involved in processing a manually filed return. So it's possible for you, if you file a return online and you go through the Social Security validation and there's no other flags that exist when you file that online, so you have an A status return, it's possible for you to have a validly filed and processed return that is a return that's considered validly processed in A status before somebody who has filed, or if Bree had filed a manual return. Again, that's because of the way, the language is validly filed and processed. And so for EIP, it is possible, again, for somebody to have filed a return online, probably in the last couple weeks or so, and to already be getting their EIP3. And again, it's because of the way, again, the language validly filed and processed. But that does not stand for refunds, again, which again, refunds, we make sure that all filers are paid for those dates as we go along.
Do you have any idea, offhand, how many GovGuam employees and retirees are going to be eligible? Maybe ballpark for the All Rise?
You know, I don't have that data. I believe that probably, when we looked at the Department of Labor data, I believe that we were able to determine perhaps there's about 60,000. And I'm pleased, Dave Dalasola, I know he is not on Guam right now, but and he's really the expert, but I believe we have about like over 60,000 actual, workers or individuals who are employed. But in terms of the government and Guam employees, I don't have that count. I don't have that count off the top of my head.
I wanted to follow up on this press release because it does say that, DRT will implement the program within 30 working days of identification of the required funds. But in the public law, it already kind of outlined where the money is going to come from with the prioritization of federal funds, and everybody, thinks it's going to be ARPA. So do you really need 30 days? Isn't the money already in the bank?
Well, just to share with you, Bree, and of course, the identification of funds, perhaps, the actual technical identification of funds piece is more Department of Administration or BBMR, kind of that's probably their wheelhouse more than, I guess, the Department of Revenue and Taxation. But, although it does state 30 days from identification of funds, our team is really, again, working to try to get it done as quickly as we can. And we're hopeful that we can get it done within, within the next month or so. I mean, again, to open up the application form so we can begin to get people to apply and, of course, to process. But, again, that's more a technical question because I am not, again, in terms of the identification of funding. And even when the RISE Act was being discussed, it was something that I believe we were deferring to DOA and BBMR in terms of that technical piece, again, because those get determined by those agencies.
But in your reading of the law, is the money supposed to come from federal funds first before we tap into local funds?
So I have the RISE Act law in front of me, and if I look at it, if you hold on just a second. Hold on just 1 second. I know that there was something in the law with regards to, it states, okay, hold on. All right, so notwithstanding any other provision of law or rule, Imagahaga Guahan is authorized to transfer up to $30 million, plus any additional amounts needed for administrative costs to DRT for the purposes of this act as may be available from the following, which are the FY 2021 General Fund appropriations and any federal appropriations that can be used for the purposes of this act. And it also states that no local funds may be used for this program as long as federal funds that can be used for the purposes of this act are available to encumber, obligate, or expend. And so that's what the law states, the RISE Act itself states. But, again, even when we were, going through the language and I believe discussing this even with the legislature, this was something that I really had to defer to DOA and, again, I really have to defer to them because in terms of, again, the identification of funds or even with regards to cash flow, when we're going to make payments for refunds, we work very closely with DOA. They determine whether or not that there is the cash available and also the sources, how those monies, where the monies are coming from for, our payments. So I would really have to defer to them on this particular matter.
Okay. It just seems though we've kind of known about the RISE Act since December, and people have been waiting for 5 months, and then the governor does her all rise, and we all kind of knew already that she was leaning towards I'm going to include the GovGuam employees and retirees. She felt that it wasn't fair, right? So you'd think that we'd kind of already have all of this so that whenever she unrolled her new program that everything would have been in place. So people wouldn't have to continue waiting another month. And then in this press release at the bottom, it says currently expansion of the parameters of the RISE Act is possible with funds received last week from the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. States and territories, however, currently await the final rule from the U.S. Treasury on parameters for the use of funds.
Right, and so I think that there had been some discussion with the governor and senators where the governor indicated that she would wait until the final guidelines were released. But, Dav, something that we've seen because there's been so many different types of assistance, aid, and relief that's come down is sometimes
Mhm.
even formulating the application itself can present a headache for some of these departments and agencies. Do we already have that process going for the Rise Act application, or would you just kind of copy paste the Judo Mangafa app?
Yeah, and so we're actually, that's exactly what, we've been discussing here over the last few weeks is, of course, in anticipation of, this perhaps happening, is that we have, been talking about the potential of utilizing some of what we, did already employ when we administered Izudi and Mingafa. And our team who worked on the Izudi and Mingafa program, or our supervisor who worked on that program, actually is part of our meetings with our taxpayer service administrator, who is now going to be administering this program. So yes, I think that in terms of the actual, putting together of the program, Bree and Chris, the great thing is that we do have some level of experience with it. Our programmers as well, we've had to do, well, now 4 different programs through the 3 EIP programs and then the local program at Suri Menkafa. So, we're going to definitely be utilizing, the experience from those to, to make the process for this and go more quickly. As I mentioned, it's going to be very critical in this coming period over the next week or so, our discussions with our IT programmers, because we really want to have or to recommend or to motivate people or persuade them to utilize the online form that we're intending to have, the online application, and that's to help to speed up the process of review. When we did at Zudi Imengafa, we had both paper-based forms and then also we had an online application. We did have people who did file a paper-based form. When there's a paper-based form that's involved, it does take a little bit more time. People drop it in the Dropbox, or they came in, or they mailed it to us. We had to go ahead and receive it, inventory it, et cetera. And, when there's an online form, it helps the process to be sped up because we are able to just pull the data up online and review it and review the associated documents, of course, that had to be provided by those taxpayers. So, where we're headed with this is with all of the programs, it's been important for governor, it's been important for administration, it's been important for our team here to get payments out quickly. I was just kind of reflecting upon this last year as we've been, working on things, because last year during Easter weekend, which I think was like April 13 weekend, 2020, that was the weekend that we worked with our programmers. And the week of Mother's Day of 2020, we also worked because, again, we wanted to get payments out. And as you saw, even with the IP3, we worked through the weekend to try to get the first set of payments out on April 10, and then through the week to get, the $194 million out as quickly as we can. So, I think that although that there may be these timeframes that are stated or established with the law, and again, reiterated in the EO, just because those are indicated doesn't necessarily mean that that is going to be, that we're going to strictly follow those and we're not going to be able to implement prior to then. Our goal has always been to implement as quickly as possible. Again, those are just guidelines, to help as well, so that way, in the event that there is an issue that we run into for some reason, that we have some level of time to be able to address it. But at this point, we've been meeting internally to discuss it, of course, and to make sure we implement as quickly as possible. And that's really our charge and what we're hoping to do.
Well, we had just a minute, Daph. So we talked about the stimmys. We covered the Rise Act pretty much. What about vehicle registration? I got a message yesterday. How is DPW, the vehicle registration, working out okay for you guys? The new location?
You know what? I've actually received like several comments about it and about how smooth it is. In fact, of course, it's great because DPW Director Vince Ariola and I actually, with all cabinet members, worked to develop pretty good relationships with. But Vince is out there and he makes sure that he goes and checks on our team there. We also, of course, have GRTA in the same building, and I've been in communication with, of course, Salvabauta as well, and just to see, of course, with our neighbors, how things are going and what their how they view or their perspective of our operations there. Our operations appear to be running very smoothly there. I think that, again, outside of a couple weeks ago when there was that Harmon fire and we did have to shut down early one day, we've been, of course, up and running, and we're happy with the operations there. And I've not heard too many comments that were not positive about the move to DPW Building B.
Can you just give us
And
do
you mind, sir? Oh, just to reiterate again, we do vehicle registration Monday through Friday at DPW Building B, and also we do driver's license services and Guam ID services Monday through Friday here at the Department of Revenue and Taxation in Barragata. And Bree and Chris, today, this morning as I rolled up, to the building, I know you recall there was a time when our car line, it kind of wound up into Barragata Heights and all the way up to SNU. This morning when I came in, it was just a little bit earlier than 7:30, about 7:20. And, we had cars that were already in our parking lot. We didn't have, the parking lot was not full. And so, just as a reminder, Thursdays and Fridays, we are able to serve people for driver's license here in Barragata. But we are not seeing the same level of, the same level of the volume of cars, I guess, that we used to see, which is actually, I know, great news for us, because it was very difficult for us to manage that crowd, over the last several months. And we're hoping now that, people are able to just kind of come in and walk in. So even though we're seeing that driver's license appointments are going into 2022. Wow. We're hoping that people are able to still to recognize that they can come in, walk in, and we're doing our best to serve them here. And again, to this morning, we didn't have a long line like we again historically have had through these past early part of this year. And again, that's good news. So please make sure that I guess I want everybody to know you can come to Rev and Tax Monday through Friday here in Barragata for driver's license services. And we will, again, 8 to 9 is we do make sure that we serve our individuals with disabilities, our Manamco and our veterans. We serve them throughout the day, but we, specifically have them serve during that 8 to 9 hour, the general public. And then of course, our individuals with disabilities, our veterans and our Manamco are also served from 9 until we close during the day. At the end of the day, sorry.
Daph, I had just one more question, but if you could stand by just for about 15 seconds.
Sure.
Good morning, Guam, and good morning, KUAM TV. Hey, fix yourself, Bree. We're on TV.
Oh,
We're on TV, girl. Oh, my God.
okay.
Good morning. It's 8:02, Thursday, May 27th. Welcome to The Link, KUAM TV Land. Proudly brought to you by Pacific Points, Jack in the Box, Cabo Enterprises, East West Rental, and IT&E. In the KUAM News Zoom room, back with Rev and Tax Director Dafne Shimizu, who has updated us on just about everything relative to the department. I did want to kind of follow up, Daph, on the cigarette stamp tax collection implementation. I know that it was a law that you guys had originally testified against it, saying that it would be much cheaper for Rev and Tax to collect taxes themselves as opposed to involving this private entity. But I know that the court has now said that you're going to have to move forward with this process. So do you have a status update on that?
With regards to the cigarette stamp tax issue, I actually, of course, had to recuse myself. So it's been our deputy directors, both, of course, the prior deputy director, Michelle Santos, and now our deputy director, Frank Leonguero, that have worked on this particular program. And so I don't have the update for you, but that's something that our team can provide. Can work with our deputy director to make sure we can provide an update on that matter for you.
Okay. Well, that was quick.
Yeah.
Bree, anything else?
No, thanks, Daphne.
Daphne, appreciate it. I feel like we got to let you go so you could go start printing those RISE Act checks.
Absolutely. And you know what? We promise you again, like with all the programs that we work free and you know, Chris, that we're going to be working to get these applications out as quickly as possible so we can get payments to our people as quickly as possible. And want to thank you for the time this morning so that, you know, again, for a lot of the questions that people have about the All Rise, you know, the EO that was just signed yesterday by Governor, you know, that we were able to get some information out to them. And we definitely will be getting more information out to our people, of course, through our partners, our media partners like, you know, K57 and I'm sorry, K57 and KUAM. So I want to thank you again for getting us on and getting the information out. Have a great day, Bree. Have a great day, Chris. Have a great day, Guam.
Thank you,
Bye,
Daph.
Daph.
There you go.